And we're off. Saturday, June 24th, 2023. Here we are back again for another episode of I'll Do It on Monday. I just want to share with you, first of all, what I'm sipping on today. No alcohol. We're drinking a little bit of horchata water. So, salud. And I have right here my bottle of water. So, that's what we're going to be sipping on today. A little bit of water. Oh yeah, I forgot to put the music. Alexa, pon música de Saramay. So,
Reproduciendo de modo aleatorio Saramay y artistas similares.
We have Alexa, baja tres. So, today I have many topics that I want to explore. I want to identify. I want to talk about. I think the first one, the first topic I want to recap on a little bit is this video I made during the week on communism and capitalism. And I just wanted to clarify a little bit my stance on that. I think the moment you make a video about communism or capitalism, people may assume that you're taking a position. And I'm agnostic. My stance in these type of topics are really, I don't really know, right? Um, I mean, there are obviously people talk about advantages and disadvantages. Um, so I think you have to consider the advantages and the disadvantages. But when it comes down to your own personal and perspective on these type of topics, um, I think they're complex or they're not defined. You can't really define if you prefer communism or capitalism. We live in a capitalistic society um, that basically shuns the communism, right? So I can't really say that I'm for or against communism or capitalism. I just think it's interesting to talk about these ideas and kind of see the unheard, unknown perspectives. Well, in my case, about how, for example, communism, they said that it was well, in the past, they would say that it was a perfect ideology, right? Everyone equal. But now, after so much time passed and people trying to implement it, just seeing how it doesn't work, how it turns into authoritarian. Again, I'm not saying that I'm for it or against it. I'm just saying it's interesting to see how you can probably say it doesn't work. Um, and I mean, if you ask me which is the perfect system, I don't think I would say either one of those. I mean, we live in a capitalistic society, and it's fun to analyze the communists too. You know, what would the world be like if everyone did their part, and the distribution of wealth was, the same among all walks of life. That would be interesting. It's an interesting thought experiment. Um, but I think in order for me to be able to really lay out an economic system, a political system, or even just a philosophical system, a way of life or a way of living, uh, I think I'm gonna have to live more years. I think more time is gonna have to pass. I don't think I'm going to be able to think of a system right now because there are a lot of factors to consider. There are many complex issues on the table. So I need to study more. I need to learn more. I need to keep reading. I need to keep listening to other people talk about the issues. Maybe when I'm older, I may be able to dish out a philosophy or something. But right now, I'm just in dialogue, right? I'm conversating with myself, um, and hopefully in the future I can conversate more with people. I have already conversated with my boy Chava and with Raimundo too, with my mom, with Angie Bang Bang. So I would like to talk more with other people, right? Okay, just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Now, the first topic on the table is why do people quit? And again, we go back to this I'll do it on Monday mentality. Um, People, and I include myself, we tend to come off the gate strong, right? We hit the ground running. We start something, we start a project, we start working somewhere new, and we basically, you know, work really hard in the beginning, and I don't know why. Eventually, that intensity diminishes, and we want to quit, right? We don't want to be doing that shit that we started doing anymore, right? We and I say this because, like I mentioned in the last two episodes that I talked, I'll do it on Monday. I mentioned that I was going to these classes, right? These Gnosis universal classes. They're basically like esoteric classes. And this Friday, I went yesterday, and the guy wasn't there, right? And I kind of, you could kind of guess that that was gonna happen because, I mean, in the beginning, there were many people when it started. It started back in, I think, like late May, no, early May, something like that, right? And and there were many people that were going, and eventually there were fewer people and fewer people and fewer people until I suddenly just, guessed that there weren't going to show up any more people to that to the classes. And yeah, this last Friday, yesterday, there, the guy didn't show up, the teacher, and we didn't have class. Um, so then I was looking into this YouTube video who, well, the person that was talking in the TED Talk, he talked about why, and this is a little bit going into the next topic. He talked about successful people, leaders, right? And he mentioned three things that people tend to do when they want to start being successful, basically being leaders. And he said people tend to talk about what they do, which is the external thing. Then they talk about how they do it. And then if they don't even have to mention it, they may mention it or they may not, but they may not even know why they do it, right? And then he said, what you really have to ask yourself first is not what you are doing, but why you are doing. You need to know why. And then you need to be able to connect with other why people. Because if you're able to connect with other why people, then you're actually going to be successful, right? That's how you get successful. So instead of going from the what to the how to the why, you need to go from the why to the how to the what, right? And I started thinking about this. I said, well, why are you doing the I'll do it on Monday episodes if like nobody even really hears them? Well, I think first of all, and this is something that I kind of I may talk about later on, but yeah, it's part of the social dilemma that I talked about last episode, in episode 2. And it's not what I kind of worked through with my therapist this week is it's not really about other people, right? Because if you're looking for the views, if you're looking for the likes, if you're looking for the comments, you're looking for the approval, um and you don't get it, you're going to feel bad. So don't put your expectations out there. Put your expectations in here. They're always talking about this. They're always saying, don't look at the outside, look in the inside, right? In the inside are the answers. And I was always like, what the hell are you talking about? What does that even mean? Well, in this case, for me at least, it means set your own standards for yourself, right? Set your expectations for you. For example, if I say I'm gonna make a video and I'm gonna try to talk for an hour and a half, that's an expectation. If you're able to do that, it's in your hands. Then you're gonna be the one that's gonna feel it's easier for you to fulfill your own needs than to have other people fulfill your needs, you know? So yeah, first of all, why do I do it? Well, I do it for me. I would say now I do it because I want to. Um, like my therapist said, there might be some type of formative intention, right? Trying to like form, not form, but instruct or teach people, right? Teach them what I learned about during the week or whatever. And I also like to give people stuff to think about, right? I like to think. So throughout the week, I'm reading, I'm watching videos, I'm listening I'm watching videos on history, on whatever's on my list. And I like to share that, here. So I write it down, and then, on Saturdays I just sit down for an hour, and then I'm just talking. So why do I do it? I need to have that like very clear, right? If I want to be a leader, if I want to be successful, and it's because I like it. It's because I like to think, and I like to give people stuff to think about. And then, of course, you may ask, then how do you do it? How do I do it? Well, I read, I watch videos, I think. I obviously have to think. And I do think about these things too. It's not just like I'm just copying and pasting, even though I kind of felt like I did a little bit of that this week. Like I just watch something or read something, and then it's just like copy paste. I just report on it, right? And I don't really think about it. I don't really chew on it. I don't really there's no reflection, right? I like to reflect on things, think about them, and then give them my own interpretation. Um, so yeah, I also think about these things. And then what do I do? I could say right now I was making music. I'm still making music. I'm still going to be working on that. But basically I create content. Sorry. I try to connect with people, right? That's what I do. But yeah, more importantly than that, I think it's connecting with yourself. It's finding your own voice in my case, and you know, um, doing that in order to satisfy your own needs. If I have all these things I want to chat about, I want to talk about, I have the space to do it, which is right here. I have the resources, which is this technology, and the platform, which is YouTube. So yeah, I could do it. Um, so then I think it's really hard. This kind of goes into the next point. It's really hard to control how things are gonna go. I'm amazed every day at how people are able to like become famous. Like how do you even do that? How do you get so many people to work towards your goal, or with you, for you, you know especially in like the greedy, like you think about it like this: we live in a greedy world, right, where everybody's only looking out for themselves. So then how is it that you get like superstars, actors, presidents, celebrities? How do you get all these people like up there? How do they get up there, right? They don't get up there by themselves. There's a bunch of people, there's a whole team behind them, there's a whole bunch of people, and they got a bunch of people behind them. There's people behind people behind people that are doing all the work, and all you see is one person. you know Excuse me. But I mean, so I think, I don't really think if you said, like, they recently, this Cheeto movie came out, right? Like Flaming Hot, just recently. And it's got the most uplifting, optimistic, inspiring, stupid story that you can think of, where it's like this guy, this Latino guy who's got nothing, right? And he's like, I think, a janitor or some shit. And then he comes up and he becomes like super wealthy, super famous, or not famous, but super wealthy, because he adds flavor to he creates the flaming hot Cheetos, which is actually a fake story that didn't really happen, which just even adds more stupidity to the already stupid concept. Um, but yeah, you think about those people, and it's like that first of all, that doesn't happen, right? You don't go from being a nobody to being a somebody. You're already someone if you become famous, right? And then it's just the people that are there with you, like low key or not that famous yet, that help you to gain that fame. I don't think, because I'm a motherfucker that has nobody working for him, or we're not working to get me famous or anything like that. And I don't even really think I'm doing what really needs to be done, because I'm not really sure what that even is, right? So I was reading about this concept in history, because I was reading this book on history, and this guy says history is a level is a level 2 chaos, or it's like a chaos level 2, right? Which basically means that the prediction that you have on the outcome influences the outcome. So then he starts explaining how there's level 1 chaos systems, for example, the weather, where um, you where basically your prediction, or what you think will happen doesn't influence it, right? The weather doesn't give a fuck if you think it's going to be hot or rainy or cold tomorrow, right? The weather's going to do whatever the fuck it wants tomorrow. So there are certain systems that don't depend on predictions, right? Or basically you can't influence them, right? They're just going to happen. And then there are chaos level 2 systems, for example, history, where if you say tomorrow we're going to have I don't know, like this guy gives the example, tomorrow we're going to have a revolution, right? So if the government knows that, or the president of the country knows that, they're going to stop it, right? And it's not going to happen. Therefore, the prediction was incorrect, right? Because the initial prediction of thinking it was going to happen influenced it, and it made it not happen, right? For example, stocks is another prediction, because they say if you predict that this stock's going to go up or down, so everybody invests their money in it that same day, and then it ends up, not happening because of what everybody's doing, then the prediction was wrong, right? The prediction was off. So I think this is kind of like this whole fame or trying to get noticed type of ordeal is kind of tied to this chaos level 2 system, right? Where what you're actually repeating to yourself, or what you're actually trying to get, that's why I mentioned that you have to kind of forget about it. The secret to life, I mentioned this on the last episode, I think. The secret, sometimes the secret is to forget. Sometimes the secret to success is to forget about what you want, right? And you already know what you want, so you can just start doing it. And then if you do that, then you're able to well, not only focus on other things, but actually let whatever's going to happen brew, and maybe happen, right? So we're going to go to the next topic, which is actually the second topic. The first topic was actually this: why do you do it, how do you do it, and what do you do it, and these other kind of little things that were connected to it. So I've been studying a little bit of logic, because I find logic very interesting. And well, it says here the question seeks to define something, right? So if you look at a normal statement, like for example, insects are animals, right? The subject insects inserts itself into this area of animals, right? So we have this broad area, or this general area called animals. And in animals, there are a lot of, excuse me, there are a lot of different types of animals, right? We have insects, we have, I don't know, bears, we have dogs, we have, all these type of different animals. So if you say dogs or insects are animals, it means that that one specific uh, part of animals is inside of animals, right? And and this happens, I think, when you say any sentence, right? Like for example, if you say, I am a human, right? So we have like the broad general term of human, and then inside of human, there's this specific area, which is the I, right? The I in that case can be defined as human now. They say that we can invert it, so we can say human is I, and then that would be like the human is inside of the area of I. So, well, that's another topic of logic. But in this case, the question seeks to define something. Sorry, would actually mean that when you ask, for example, are insects animals? You're actually looking to see if that subject fits into the general category of animals, right? So this is interesting because um, when you ask a question, you're really looking to define something, right? And this goes a little bit back with the concept of it's complex, right? It's complex means, from an entropy example, that it's moving. There's possibility, right? Because it's not defined, it's not limited yet. So you go from, for example, I think it's in physics, where you go from a simple low entropy, which is low chaos system, and maybe you go up to a high entropy system, which is all disorderly. But uh, there's an example to this where they say, imagine a room that's clean. It's low entropy, everything's in order. And then you disorganize the room, right? You make it messy, you throw everything around, and then, it's messy. So there's high entropy because it's disorganized, but it's not complex because you can see where everything is. The moment that that room was complex, it's when you were messing it up, right? When you were moving from low entropy to high entropy, that's when it was complex because there were many possibilities. You could have thrown that book down on that side of the room or on this side of the room, or it could have, it wasn't defined, right? So that's kind of what that means. You when something is complex, it's not defined, right? And well, we all know the general how can I say it, like the general structure for a definition. Whenever we want to define something, uh, we have to look above that thing, right? So we need to see what category that thing is in, and then we need to mention something, and then we need to look below and mention something very specific about that thing. For example, a table is a piece of furniture that allows you to set things down. So a table, right, is a piece of furniture that's general. So there are many pieces of furniture like chairs or lamps, or right. So it's a piece of furniture that allows you to set things down. That's something particular, specific about that thing to be defined, right? So it's like a midterm, right? You have to whatever you want to define, you have to look for the general category of it, and then mention something specific, which is how you define, or how you're able to encapsulate and understand what something is, right? Um, so logically, a question is a categorical proposition, right? And this goes a little bit into this other book I'm reading on what is categorical. Categorical proposition means that you're able to fit it into that category, right? So you say a table is a piece of furniture. Is a table a piece of furniture? Does it enter that category? And if you say yes, the table is a piece of furniture because it enters in that category, then you have your answer. But how do you know that something is false, right? How do you because they say there's a nexus. There's a nexus, and the nexus helps you to understand if something is true or false, right? For example, if I say And there are ways to do this in logic, right? Like if I say, I don't know, um, people that are not in people that are in Africa are Africans, right? And then I tell you these Spanish people, right, from Spain that are in Africa, or yeah, that are in Africa. These Spanish people are in Africa. Therefore, these Spanish people are in Africa because Africans live in Africa, right? But you're like, no, they're not Africans. They're Spanish. They're Europeans, right? But I say, no, my logic. What's wrong with my logic, right? And then that's where you get a lot of fallacies. And then there's a bunch of fallacies in logic that you can see. But it's like, how did you even really know what the truth is, right? Which we would go back to the first video where we would talk where I was talking about truth. What is truth, right? One of the first videos I made where when I started talking for the segment, and in it I define truth as that which you want to know, but you don't know about someone or something, right? Like what happened or who is the person. Um, but that's it. That's the truth. You just wanna know, what happened or who someone is. But if you're talking about, these people are European, how do you know that's true? Right? You could say, well, we can check their birth certificates, we can ask them, we can ask their parents, right? And then, but even then, what is European, right? And then we get into, what I'm trying to get to eventually is the deconstruction of things, right? Like kind of like Nietzsche, which is kind of like playing like the devil's advocate, like or playing the antagonist in the story, right? You're gonna say things that just go against the structured order, right? Like just this week on social media, this guy, there was this meme, right, where it's like this girl was like something about respect my rights, and with all this like social justice shit going on lately. And then some guy was like, this isn't my opinion, this is verified scientific empirical evidence and facts and all this shit. And I was like, whoa, dude, slow down. Like science is even, because Nietzsche says science in its maximum expression actually fills you with doubt, right? So many people are like, oh yeah, the veracity of science, the truth of science. And they're getting to the point where they're just saying, these people that are all like, oh yeah, science, they're kind of like, how people back in the day would, honor and pray to the sun and their gods and all this shit, right? Like it's like, oh yeah, science is the ultimate truth and it's so right all the time. And it's like, no, because first of all, we're interpreting everything we're seeing based on our prejudices, right? Just like rats do, just like any animal on this planet does. So you're gonna say, yeah, this is this, for example, gravity. Gravity is something that is verifiable. That's the truth, and that's it. That's the limit, right? And I would say that's the limit up to now. That's what we know up to now, right? It's kind of like that infinity thing I was talking about. Infinity is an idea, is a limit actually, where there is no limit, right? Where we don't know the limit yet. And to say that there is no limit without being able to back it up is fucking stupid, because we really don't know if there is a limit, right? Uh, so that's kind of what I'm talking about the truth, right? If you say these people are European, and even if you're able to confirm with the birth certificate, you're always going to find someone that can say, well, what about this? Well, what about Europe not actually being Europe and being, the Roman Empire, or not, or just being a piece of land or a piece of territory, or Europe doesn't even exist, right? And you can say, yeah, that's crazy. What the hell are you talking about? But I would tell you, you don't really know what the hell you're talking about, right? You think you do, and you act like you're so smart and wise, and people normally talk like, oh yeah, what's proven by science, what we already know, what we understand, and to not be humble enough to know that you may be wrong, or that there are other possibilities that we haven't even been exposed to. It's just stupid, it's just ignorant. So getting into logic, right? And seeing these examples where they're just like, insects are animals, and then the fallacy is, if you say that unicorns are not animals, well, you obviously know that's not true, because first of all, unicorns don't even exist. So, and it's like, how do I, this surprises me so much, because logic is supposed to be about rules that will take you to the truth. But then, at the end of the day, they're just kind of like, well, it's not true, or well, you do know it's true, right? Like they have their little syllogisms, right, where they go with the middle term, the first term, and the last term, or some shit like that. It's called, so they say things like, I don't know, all all men are, I don't know, all men are humans. Socrates is a man, so Socrates is a human, right? And you're able to prove that with two premises, or premises they're called, which would be the first two sentences and then the conclusion, right? And then they say, yeah, that's true. But then they give you an example of a fallacy, and the fallacy is like something outrageous, right, that we would understand commonly as outrageous. And then the conclusion is obviously wrong, but then their explanation is just like, well, obviously it's wrong, right? And it's like, well, it's wrong because you know what the common, like, convention on that thing is, right? You know what everybody agrees on, like, for example, ponies don't exist or whatever. But logic doesn't really give you a tool to verify the nexus, right? You have to really reflect on it, because there's this type of a backwards logic that you could use, where you could say things like, um, I don't know, maybe I was late because of the traffic, and then say things like, um, because of the traffic, I was late, right? Like kind of like, no, no, no. I just remember there's a perfect example. They say that politicians use this, for example, with terrorism, and they would say something like, terrorism or terrorists are, I don't know, from the Middle East, right? So then that means if you're from the Middle East, you're a terrorist, right? And that's like a backwards logic, which is a fallacy, because if it applies this way, it doesn't mean it's going to apply that way, right? Backwards. So, yeah, in this case, and it does mention that it's the reflexive use of terms as regards their social status or functions. So the reflexive use is obviously something that it's not just like use it, follow the structures and the rules. You actually have to reflect on it, right? So logic doesn't, like, even though logic has rules, if you follow them, you can still be wrong. That's kind of the funny thing and the stupid thing. So it doesn't. So what I say is, like, it doesn't really matter if you follow the rules, or if you learn the rules or know the rules, because you can still make fallacy mistakes, right? Which is fucking stupid, because you still have to reflect on it. So then why just not reflect on it, without the use of learning the stupid rules in logic? Um, and then it says, as regards their logical status or functions, which you have to look at either their state, their status, what are they? A pony? Well, a pony doesn't exist. But then you say a human exists. Well, how the fuck do you know a human exists? How do you know we exist? How do you know, it's not all in our head, or, we're actually something else, but we just can't see everything we are. And then, or functions, which is based on what they do, right? So it's like, well, you see that guy is running, so he's a runner, right? And it's like, well, how are you really sure, right? But that's just kind of being like a niche, right? That's kind of being like, starting to deconstruct. Um, so this, I say, and this is kind of like maybe a more sound approach, I could say. If we start by definitions, maybe we would be able to actually make use of the logical rules, right? And this is just an idea. I'm kind of like talking to myself here. But if you're able to define things and based on their definition, then come to terms with the truth, right? Because as I mentioned, the truth is something of uh, the truth is that which hides from you, right? But is there. It's like behind someone's back. They're hiding it. They're holding it behind their backs or whatever, or it's behind the door. So you just gotta like check or ask or see what it is. Um, so you're able to define it, and when you're able to define it, maybe you're able to know if it's true or not, right? Um, so it says here, Kant's non-universal because of we do not know, everything is particular. And this kind of goes a little bit with well, Immanuel Kant, the philosopher. um I believe he says that nothing is really universal. I don't remember who said this, but someone says that it's not universal. Oh yeah, I remember. It's not. It's the a priori idea of knowledge, right? So there's a priori, which is before knowledge, and there's a posteriori knowledge, which is after knowledge. You may ask, before what or after what? Before experience or after experience? So there's knowledge that you can only have or get or know once you experience something, right? So you see an apple fall and you're like, oh, gravity, right? Things fall, and then you make a law or a rule or whatever. That's a posteriori. But he says there's obviously a priori knowledge that you know before the experience, and it's like, and some may call it like intuition or instinct. Well, it's more into intuition, because instinct is actually something more visceral, something more physical. But uh, you say, okay, well, if you know something before you even know about like where to even apply it, right? Uh, well, first of all, that's crazy. How are you going to know that? And second of all, that's kind of impossible, because you would have to have at least some knowledge about some things in order to make the the deduction, right, or the induction of it. So if you say, for example, he gives this example, like you know that the foundation to something, for example, is weak, and you're putting heavy things on top of that weak foundation, and you're like, oh, I know a priori that that's gonna fall, even though I've never seen it fall. But he says then you would have to know about that prior, to the experience. You would have to have had that experience before, so you would have to have that knowledge a posteriori to be able to infer that that's going to happen to that foundation, to the weak foundation, right? So he says, um, so how the hell do you know that that's going to fall? Because you have a basis knowledge of things that when heavy things are on top of weak things, they crush them, and the underlying foundation gives in, right? It breaks or whatever the fuck. So this happens, you know, and then you think that you're for the first time like having that thought. You think that that thought is like, a priori. You're like, oh, I've never, even been at a construction site, for example, with a house, so I wouldn't know if it's gonna fall or not. But it's like, yeah, you do, because you have that knowledge. And then it's so we have knowledge that is very how can I say it? Let's say, well, because I'm gonna make an argument right now, which is the one he makes, and I agree with him. So what does it mean to know things before they happen or to know things before the experience? That means that know um you know things intuitively, right? If you know them before. But what does it mean to know things after the experience? Oh, well, now we're talking about objective things, right? Now we're talking about scientific things because if I saw the apple fall from the tree or if I saw this or that, I'm able to tell you with evidence that it happens a posteriori. Empirically, I'm able to prove it, and that makes it universal, right? It's a universal law. They say it's scientific, and the scientific is the objective, right? It's the non-bias. It doesn't matter if you're in the mood or not, or if you're feeling it or not. It happens, right? It happens regardless of how the fuck you think and feel. It's objective. It's universal, right? And then that would mean that whatever's a priori, whatever happens before the experience, is actually more subjective, more kind of, intuitive, more. Okay, so we have those definitions, right? And then Kant does something fucking crazy, right? And this is in the beginning of the book, Critique of the Reason or Critique of Reason. And he says, no, it's the other way around, right? If something is a priori, if you know, if something is if you're able to apply something regardless of you knowing it, like it doesn't matter if you know it or don't know it, it exists. And that knowledge or that well, this is where we get into a little bit of problems with the terms, right? Because if we say knowledge, what if humans don't exist, right? Then who's gonna have that knowledge, right? But okay, let's say that let me just explain it, right? So if you're able to know things, if you're able to, if there are if there are things that exist before you are able to experience them, those are universal, right? Because regardless of you even knowing them scientifically or whatever the fuck, they exist. Those are universal. Plus, we don't even really know how the fuck can we say universal when we don't even know what's outside of our fucking solar system, right? Or outside of the earth or whatever the fuck, right? Beyond the moon, probably, or not even. So they're not actually universal. They may be, I mean, we don't even know what's in the oceans, right? They may be uh, I don't know, like territorial landform rules, right? Earth rules, or maybe even just like cultural rules, those scientific things, or they may only apply to Earth, like gravity and things like that. Uh, but yeah, he does this crazy thing. He switches it, right? And my mind was blown. I was like, yeah, that's true. So how are you gonna say something, bro? What type of person do you have to be to say something, have it make sense, and then say the opposite and have it make even more sense, right? He's fucking crazy. And and then and then you're like, well, yeah, what you would, perceive intuitively or a priori would actually be um universal, right? Because regardless of you knowing it or not, it's true, right? We could say. So then where does that leave the a posteriori knowledge, the empirical, scientific, objective, universal knowledge? Well, it's a particular case. We're a particular case. Earth is a particular case. So just because it applies to us doesn't mean it's going to apply to everything in the universe. It doesn't mean it's universal. I think the maybe the terminology is wrong. And you may say, well, people know that, it doesn't really mean universal. And it's like, no, they don't. People are stupid. They actually think it means universal. If you're like, hey, maybe gravity doesn't exist on other solar systems, they're gonna be like, oh, you're crazy. Gravity is scientific and it's objective, and it's like, no, you know. So again, how do we really know what's true then? How can we really analyze the truth, right? When someone may come along and just flip what we already know, it's like, oh yeah, you call that gravity, well I call that, the universe pushing down, like Einstein believed gravity was, right? I think Einstein, because his model of the universe, or for example of the planets, is actually that they're warping space and time, right? Like space and time continuum is like it's like this thing we're in, right? And kind of like if we were in water, right? And then like I guess like the planet or whatever takes, kind of like moves the water out, but then at the same time the water pushes in on the planet. So that's kind of like gravity. Like gravity isn't actually the planet bringing shit down. It's actually the universe from the outside pushing things inward, right, to the earth. So it's like, yeah, man, I mean, and then Jordan Peterson talks about how we have an incomplete map, how we have an incomplete map of life, yeah, of the world, but we're still able to navigate it, right? We're still able to get from point A to point B. We're still able to work, to communicate, to talk to others. It's functional. It's incomplete, but it's functional. Excuse me. The information we have is enough to get us by, but it's not enough to, make us completely understand what life is, how life works, you know. So yeah, I believe people are. Oh yeah, and then in that post that I said, oh yeah, I forgot to finish talking about that. But yeah, coming back to that, so there was this like meme, right? And this girl says, my opinion, blah blah blah, and then this like stoic, ancient Greek philosopher was like, you're what I'm talking about is not based on opinions or subjectivity. It's based on scientific rigor and empirical evidence and sustained facts, and I went to the comments and people were like, yeah, like science and objectivity. And I was like, science ideals are also ideals. They're prejudice. They're interpreted by humans, and humans err. So yeah, I said something like that, like science is also an ideal, or scientific concepts are also ideals. And then like two people were like, fuck yeah, and then somebody laughed at me. Somebody was like, haha. And I was like, that person that laughed at me, because it's like seeing the negative, right? Seeing the glass half full, half empty. These people were like, two people were like, yeah, which they obviously like agreed with me. And then I'm noticing, the one guy that laughed. But it's like, yeah, I was happy for the people that were like, oh yeah, that's true. And then the guy that laughed, I was kind of like, well, that's one of them. That's one of them religious scientific people that are like, yeah, man, like science, you can't, you know, argue with science. Like science is fucking God. And it's like, whoa, don't fucking kill me, man. I'm just saying we don't really know. We don't really have the whole picture. You can't deny that, right? So this takes us to the third topic, which is actually what is scientific, right? And let me just bear with me a little bit. I'm gonna try to deconstruct the scientific for a little bit. So if I was actually thinking about this throughout the week, I was like, what is scientific? You know, uh, and I was asking myself, is scientific that which can be proven over and over again, right? Because they say, I forget the exact term for empirical, but there's like a difference between empirical, objective. scientific. They're different ideas, but they're around the same area, right? But I think if you're able to demonstrate something with an experiment, and it gives you the same results, the same data, you collect the same data, analyze the same data, report on the same data, and it's the same data over and over again, then you're able to say, oh yeah, and under the same conditions, or I mean under different conditions, then you're able to say that's scientific, right? That which can be proven over and over again is scientific because it doesn't change, right? So that which is scientific is that which does not change under any circumstances, right? You could say it's raining and gravity still exists. It's snowing and gravity still exists, right? It's hot, it's cold, it's whatever, and gravity still exists, right? I'm mad, gravity still exists. I'm happy, gravity still exists, right? So under different circumstances, that can be proven over again. Is that scientific? Is scientific uh, does in order for something to be scientific, does it need to go through the scientific method, which is this like hypothesis, right? Well, observation, you observe something, the apple falls from the tree, and then that makes you have a hypothesis, right? A theory. So you say maybe there's a ghost that's pulling the apple down, or maybe there's a force that pulls the apple down, right? So then you test your hypothesis with an experiment, all right? You get the conditions, you get the variable, the apple, the what's it called? There are two variables: the dependent variable, the independent variable. You base your hypothesis off the cause and effect kind of a structure, right? What was the cause? What do you think is the cause? What do you think is the effect? You test it with an experiment, and then when you're doing the experiment, you collect data, you gather data, you analyze the data, and then if the data confirms your hypothesis, then you were correct. If not, then you're incorrect, right? So that's kind of the scientific method, right? The scientific method of testing hypothesis by collecting data under specific circumstances and moments, right? And even if we go a little bit further, something may be true. I love this thing, and I'm being fucking sarcastic, where they're talking about percentages, and they're like, oh yeah, like 80% of the time, people do this or people that. And first of all, percentages, what I've been learning about percentages lately on this book called Math for Life, recommended, they say that percentages can be manipulated, right? So don't ever trust a percentage, because first of all, you need to ask yourself, a percentage of what, right? Specifically of what? And then if they say, well, the percentages of people in the country, and it's like, how did you get that percentage? 80% of the people in the country, based on what sample, for example, right? Based on the sample of I don't know, 10 people, right? 10 people from that country. You didn't survey everybody, So if you survey 100 people out of 300 million in a country, and those 100 people, out of those 100 people, 83 say yes. You're able to say, oh yeah, 83% of the people in the country say yes, you know, and that's tricky, because the percentage gets, it gets shown, it gets shown as 80%, but then you have to ask yourself, 80% of what? Of 100 people from the north or from the south or from the east, like all those type of things matter. Or when they talk about percentages, increase or decrease, right? And it says it went up 200%, and you're like, holy fuck, 200% is, that's more than 100%. But if, like, for instance, if it was a dollar or a peso, what's 200% of a peso? It's that times two, right? So it's 2 pesos. If it was $1 now, it's $2. So it's actually not that much, right? Percentages I think are scary because people don't really understand them, which is what this book was saying, which is actually true, which I believe because I think I used to think about percentages like, wow, that's fucking big. 200, 600%, like what the fuck? And it's just 6 times more that which you were talking about, right? Um, and obviously, if I say, "Oh yeah, that went up $6 or 6 pesos," that's less. How can I say it? That's less sensational, right? That's less media attention than saying 600 fucking percent, right? Whoa, that's gonna create a fucking riot, right? That there's people gonna be pissed off and shit, and it's like, so yeah, what's scientific, right? Is it that which lives in the physical world, the tangible sensory world, right? Is it that, like, gravity? We don't even know what the fuck that is, right? That's a concept. But I think I don't mean to sound like an idealist, but lately I think I've been kind of more drawn to the ideal perspective. I'm kind of more, I've been thinking more about that stuff because I don't know if it's just my how can I say it? Like my propensity to kind of go against people, right? So when people are like, yeah, we're objective and scientific and we're able to prove and disprove whatever the fuck we want, I'm kind of like, no, man, because you don't even know, we don't even know what things really are, right? So is it that which lives in the physical and tangible sensory world, right? That which we can perceive, like, I don't know, we could talk about maybe physics, things like that. So if you're like, a car works, right? And a car works under rain, under different circumstances. That's fucking scientific. Your cell phone, what you're recording on now, you know, that's scientific. How the fuck are you gonna say that that's not empirical, objective? That's not something that you can trust in, right? Because and it's kind of funny how it boils down to trust as humans, because we're deep down in our core, we're still humans. We still want to trust things. When we get in a car, on a bus, we want to be able to trust that it's gonna take us to where we want to go, that it's not going to explode, that it's not going to break down, that it's not going to, that a wheel's not going to fly off the fucking car or the bus. So yeah, is it the tangible world, and that would kind of make an argument for me because if you're like, yeah, man, like you're in this world, I would just take it back to that Jordan Peterson thing, which he said it's incomplete. Your eyes only perceive what your eyes are able to perceive. Your sensory, uh, receptive, like antennas can only perceive what you're allowed to see, what you're capable of seeing, right? You don't really know if there are more noises in there, more things that we maybe don't even have the sensory input to perceive, right? So here it says only that and all other is discarded or thrown out, right? Which is kind of like where I wanted to go. And I don't mean to sound mystical now, but it's like people, for example, people are constantly throwing out the zodiac, you know, and and yeah, just esoteric things or things that they're kind of like, oh yeah, that shit's just kind of like uh like kind of crazy, kind of out there, like fumado in Spanish. Um, because again, people are scientific. People only believe in objective reality, right? They don't want to mess with like the zodiac signs. What the fuck is that? They don't even know what it is, and they just discard it. They're like, oh yeah, Walter Mercado or this shit, right? So you can't discard, you can't throw out all other things if you don't even know what the whole picture is, right? That's the definition of closed-minded, right? When you I think when you're intolerant, and I think you can always kind of find that in people. you can talk to a person and they may be like, oh yeah, and I'm not saying I'm not intolerant. I may be intolerant with certain things. I don't really know what they are, but I also have my biases. But I'm just kind of being a critic here. Like if you're talking to someone and they're really open minded and they're like, yeah, 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 this and that and this and that, and then they're like, I'm sure you can get to a point in the conversation where they're probably gonna be like, nah, they're gonna laugh and they're gonna laugh at you, and they're gonna be like, no, like, or they may just straight out ignore you. They might be like, yeah, no, that's not, you know. I think it happens a lot, for example, with Mexican moms when you're talking about God, and then you tell them like, there are other religions, like Islam, the Jewish faith, for example, even Jesus was Jewish, Buddhism, Taoism, all these other types. And they're just kind of like, yeah, no, that's not God's stuff. That's not real God's will or real God stuff. And they just discard it. It's like out the window. That doesn't exist. That's not real. Those people are crazy. And it's like, no, how are you can't. I'm not saying go and be a fucking Jewish or a Buddhist, but you can't discard them. And you can't use this stupid thing that people often do and say, oh yeah, I respect them, but I don't believe in them. It's like, no, that's the same thing. You're being garbage. You're basically saying that whatever they believe is not real. And you don't know. You really don't know, right? So I'm kind of gonna get away from this topic a little bit because it's just basically the same shit over and over again. It's deconstruction. It's doubt everything. I think it kind of goes back to, I think, Descartes or Voltaire, where they were just like, yeah, doubt everything. Um, you don't know for certain anything, right? Even with, I think it was Socrates who says like, I only know that I know nothing or something like that. But yeah. So yeah, this was the next point, which is basically just to kind of finish up on this and get to the next point. If you don't trust something, does that give you the right to treat it badly? Is it your right then not to believe it? Right now, this is just if you don't trust it, which is what I'm saying. That's the scientific thing. At the core of science, which is kind of like where I got to a little bit right now with this conversation I'm having with myself. Is basically science boils down to a very basic human emotion, which is trust. And actually, if we go even deeper into it, it's not trust, it's fear. It's fear that something will happen, right? Which then gets covered up by trust. And you say, well, I don't trust that. I don't trust you, right? Kind of like the whole I'll do it on Monday segment, right? But that doesn't even really based on it is based on trust because it um it makes they make things take longer than they have to take, right? And like I was watching this video on Belize because I wanted to visit Belize, and they say, yeah, if you come to Belize, man, just know that things are not like the States. Things aren't going to be like done right away. They're going to take time. You got to have a lot of patience. People don't do things right away. And I say, man, in other words, they're lazy. They're all do it on Monday mentality. And it's like, um, I don't really know where I would prefer to live. If I would prefer to live in a place where people are actually like, I'll do it on Monday and they do it on Monday, or I'll do it on Monday, but they do it like way the fuck later. Which actually I'll do it on Monday means like I'll do it way the fuck later. Like I'm not gonna do it right now. Um, Yeah, I don't know. Where would I prefer to live? Where people say I'll do it now and they do it now, or I'll do it on Monday and they never do it? I think I would prefer to live in places where they say I'm going to do it now and they do it now. But I know that those places people aren't as fun, right? I know that those places tend to be like more boring um, because of the personality of people, right? People are more serious, they're more, and it's actually because people supposedly are more fun in those other places that they take longer for doing things, right? But Yeah, this question, if you don't trust something, does that give you the right to treat it badly? Does that give you the right to say, fuck that, you know? If you don't trust it, if it's something that maybe, I think a lot of people are born into, for example, their religions, their beliefs, their culture, and then they learn to trust their context and learn to distrust all outsiders, right? All the other contexts, all the other cultures, all the other beliefs and ideologies. So is that even right? Like it's just chance. You were born into that country, you were born into that ideology, you were born into that family by chance, you know? And even that can be questioned. Was it really by chance or could you have chosen it? Right? And I would say, whoa, maybe you there is a possibility that you can choose it. What if you can choose it and you really did choose that from before you were even born? Right? Then it's your right to believe in that because I guess you wanted to, but still, does that give you the right to be intolerant? Um, and I'm not saying that by because Andrew Tate said this too a little while ago about how he respected like Muslims because they were intolerant, but in the sense that they believe firmly in their beliefs, and and I think that's what it's about. You have to believe firmly in your beliefs, but in a certain way, you also have to know that there are other beliefs out there, right? And I think it's like a complicated topic, right? That's why I'm still like working through it. Mm. But yeah, let's go to the next one. So I think last week I was talking about the social dilemma problem that I had, right? Where I was trying to focus on other people and actually trying to make it like a, how can I say it, like a we thing. And yeah, I mean, like my therapist, I already mentioned a little bit about this, but now I'm gonna go deeper into it. Yeah, my therapist was just basically like focus on yourself, man. Like, not like that, but he said like you can give yourself things to like objectives or you set yourself goals, right? So if you set yourself goals, you can, how can I say it? You're able to satisfy those needs, right? And you're not gonna get frustrated by doing or by trying to fulfill how can I say it? Yeah, probably like unreachable goals with the whole views thing and with the whole like things or comments. So this, I guess, focus on yourself and not others. When you're talking about goal setting, that means set goals for yourself but not for others, right? And set reachable goals, goals that you can probably accomplish or do, right? So the goals you set are for yourself and not the public. And this kind of goes a little bit into the addicted to a certain emotion, right? If you're addicted to an emotion, which is actually the thing, because I was reading Tony Robbins and he kind of says that you know people that are addicted to like eating or drinking or smoking or whatever, they're actually addicted to the emotion, because he says people that are addicted to these things, they're not doing it all day all the time every second of the day, right? They do it at certain times when they have that certain emotional need to kind of like do it, right? So if you're addicted to the emotion, like for example in my case where I'm kind of like addicted to the emotion of like looking for approval or for the public's approval, well, you know there's this other quote or this other book that I was reading where they say even Pavlov's dogs stopped salivating once they saw that the meat never arrived, right? That the meat stopped arriving. So if you have any knowledge of conditioning or behaviorism and the whole Pavlov dogs experiments and the salivation of the dogs, that conditioning works when when people or things or animals are able to associate one stimulus with a consequence or a result, right? A response. So, for example, they would ring. Pavlov would ring this little bell, and when he would ring it, the dogs would come down and they would see meat, so they would start salivating because they knew they were going to eat meat, right? And he started doing that. Every time he would serve them meat, he would ring the bell and they would salivate and then eat, and again and again and again, until eventually he took away the meat, and all he would do would be ring the bell, and the dogs would come down or whatever, and they would be salivating, right? And the salivation was the response or a consequence of the ringing of the bell, right? So basically what like these books say is that we're conditioned like that. We're conditioned like emotionally, mentally, with our actions, like a certain stimuli happens, like a certain ringing of the bell happens, and we salivate, we react, we respond in specific ways, right? We get mad, we get angry, we get confused, we get all fucking like emotionally dysregulated or whatever. So what um what this book, for example, talks about, it's called Deja de Ser Tú by Joe Spinoza, I think. He says that we need to mm, basically detect those type, and for that we need self-awareness. We need to detect all of these little like conditioning habits that we have, and then we need to get rid of them because, okay, how do we get conditioned in the first place? How does a dog start salivating? Well, because they see the meat, right? And the meat is a situation. So why do you get mad when someone tells you no, for example? Well, because maybe in the past, when a specific someone told you no meant that you had to get angry, right? And that was true in the past. Now, if the habit or the conditioning habit is still true in your current context, then it shouldn't be a problem because it should be working, right? Because you need it. That's why you started to do it. That's the best you came up with. That's the best response you came up with, right? So if you're used to reacting a certain way to certain things, it's because they have worked in your past. Now, if you're still reacting like that and your circumstances have changed, your context has changed, then they become a problem because those type of reactions are no longer necessary, right? They don't adjust. They are a conflict to your current context. So that's where you have to say, okay, maybe this worked in the past, but I don't need it now. It's actually counterproductive now. Now I need to react another way, right? Because maybe my high level of intensity or my low level of intensity or whatever reaction I have is not working. I have to come up with another strategy, right? So you have to do this. um I think you have to do this. You get the chance to do this consciously. And if you don't learn how to do it consciously, it can be done unconsciously. You can just like one day start doing things differently because you see that the meat is no longer there. The situation is no longer requires you to act that way. And that could happen. Eventually you see reality and you say, okay, well, I used to get paranoid in the past because I was around like these type of people or whatever, or bad people, or I don't know, but that's not the case anymore, so I don't need to get paranoid, right? Like things change, so you need to reevaluate it. And then the addicted to the emotion part comes in when you're basically just like living those emotions again because you're addicted to them, right? Because you don't know what else to do. It's kind of like the addiction to alcohol or whatever, but it's the emotion, right? If alcohol used to work in the past, but now it doesn't, but now it's like no longer necessary, then you don't really need to be addicted to it anymore, right? You just got to kind of notice that. And then I'm not saying it's easy, right? And maybe there's even more work to be done there. But that's just like one thing that I could talk or share about, right? In this case, with the whole salivation thing. And then we're gonna start wrapping up with these last two topics. Today I was thinking about how I was in class and there was this student that was like just asking some random questions, and I was kind of like distraught. I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And eventually, um, you know, like it didn't make sense, like the whole emotional thing, because there were these cases where like some things would come up, and then it was kind of like, oh, you see, like I told you that that was what I said, which wasn't right. It was actually something different. But you didn't want to correct the student with like using your logical answer when like the reaction or the response they're giving is emotional, right? So so I kind of started thinking about the whole logical emotional sides that there are to life. And I tend to think of myself as logical. I don't know if I am. Maybe I'm more emotional, but I like to think that I'm logical, and I like to think that I follow an order, a logical order of one, two, three, first, second, third. This relates to this. This relates to this. Cause and effect, linkage, analysis, right? Um, and then it would make sense to say that emotional or the emotion, like what the student was doing was actually what was actually trying to do like some type of association, right? So there was like this thing over here and this thing over here, and there was like no direct connection. But since they were kind of like in the same picture, it was like, oh yeah, this is this, you know? And it's like, no, it's not, because in order for that to be that, you would have to connect it through these stages or whatever, you know? But it was kind of like, no, since they're kind of like both there, they're kind of like, the association, right? And association, I think, and even in learning, because they say in order for you, in education, in order for you to learn things, like associate them to what you remember, right? So in order, like for example, I was trying to remember four answers to four questions, and it was like there was a negative, a positive, and a negative. I remember that. But when like the first time I was trying to remember, I was like, whoa, I have no idea how I'm gonna remember this order, right? Even though it may seem simple, like, okay, it's negative, positive, positive, negative. But what I did is like I used a memic, I think it's called, technique, where I associated the first answer, which was negative, with actually like the beginning of the universe. You know how it was first supposedly all dark. We come from chaos, right? And then there was a light, and now we are like in the order or whatever. So, and then eventually, when everything dies and the universe dies, we'll like everything will go back to darkness and chaos. So I was like, okay, the first answer is negative, like chaos, and then it's like light, light, and then at the end it will be negative again, like chaos, right? So it was like the first one's negative, the second one's positive, the third one's positive, like life, like light, and then the last one's gonna be negative, and that's how I remembered it. I associated it, but that was that there's really, well, there's a logical order, but it was by association, right? Like you remember things by association. That's why if you don't do that in school, if you don't reason things like according to your logic, I think it's really hard that you remember things. I mean, a teacher can do it. A teacher can reason things for you logically, but you're not really thinking. You're not really doing the work. A teacher can tell you, "Oh yeah, remember, it's you know, like for example, how to remember nephew and niece. Like niece, like Denise. The girl's name is Denise, the niece, right? Like the nephew, the niece, shit like that, right? And it's like, oh yeah. So then they remember. It's like, oh yeah, like the teacher said, the niece. But you also have to do the work as a student, right? So then I was like, okay, emotional is association, and why would you use the emotional, right? Why wouldn't you? Why would you? Well, first of all, why would you use anything? Why would you use the emotional or the logical? Well, obviously because you're trying to benefit. You know, if you're using logic, is because you can win an argument, right? If you're like, oh yeah, well logically you're wrong and this is right and blah blah blah, because you can win. But what happens when you use emotion, right? When you appeal to empathy or pity, right? And you're like, oh well, my child was sick or this shit, you're trying to win too. You're trying to benefit from the emotional, right? You're trying to appeal to the emotional. But anyway, focusing on the emotional obviously does not have order, right? It's kind of chaotic. It's kind of out there. And then my question was like, what can this be used for? Well, first of all, I think when you're being logical, it's more work. You have to think more because it's not association, it's not free association, right? Like that over there is connected to this all the way over here. No, it's like, no way, logically it's not, right? So it's a shortcut. It's like, how do I get from there to there? Oh, through emotion, right? And then it's like a logical person can look and say, well, you're confused, you know? And they're just gonna be like, no, it's there, and they'll look at you like this, like, you know, like what are you, Mr. Logical, talking about, right? So there's a benefit of there's a shortcut to that, right? There's a rationality, and I think there's also expression. You're able to express yourself, and in this case, I don't mean to say, I want to kind of like just talk a little bit about expression. I don't think, because I don't want to say let go, right? Let go of steam, or you need to let go of that negative emotion. It's like, no, that's bullshit. It's like it's like if you're happy, you don't let go of happiness, right? Why the fuck do people say, yeah, you need to blow off some steam, you need to let go of that negative emotion? Or people don't say let go of that happy emotion or that positive emotion. What the fuck? It's just any emotion needs to be expressed, period. Stop, stop being biased from the bad, with this shit. It's like emotions need to be expressed. You feel what you feel and you need to express it. So maybe, that's the, we're emotional beings too. We feel, and we need to express that. Whether it's good or bad for society, who gives a fuck if it's good or bad for you? you know Everybody needs to do it. If you feel happy, you need to express happiness. If you feel sad, you need to express sadness. If you feel angry, you need to express anger. If you feel confused, you need to express confusion. Even these, if you feel shame, you need to express shame, right? You feel shame. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, whatever type of complex emotions you can think of, you have to express them, right? I think that's important. um yeah, so I've been ranting for a little bit. That's basically it. The last thing I kind of wanted to do, I don't know if I should do it, but I don't really know if I'm gonna do this again. So I was like, I might as well just do it right now. It was kind of like analyze the prayer, the Father's Prayer, right? Because I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm gonna try to do it, right? I was thinking about it, and it kind of made sense what I was thinking about, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but you know, like I say the prayer a lot, like in my day, right? So then it goes, Padre Nuestro, right? Que estás en el cielo, and that from the beginning, I think it talks about a father, right? Our father. And it's interesting how it's our father and not our mother, right? And then it's like the mythological association or the symbolic association with the father is usually the order, right? Because the mother is kind of like the emotion, the heart, maybe even like the chaos, the negativity. And the father is like the light, the positive, right? The masculine energy, numerical language, right? Science, like the order or whatever, giving order to things. So I think that talks about life in a way. It talks about the order, but it also talks about life, right? Thinking about life and death as, two opposites, and talking about, our Father, Padre Nuestro, our Father, which is, the order. Um, so first we identify, and then it says que estás en los cielos, that thou are in heaven, that you are in heaven. So now we place him somewhere, right? It's this masculine figure, it's a paternal figure, it's the order, and the order lives in the skies, right? And I think in the Egyptian religion, there was the earth in the skies, and the earth was actually Mother Earth, associated again with the woman, with the mother, symbolically and mythologically. And then the sky is actually Saturn, right? I think, and that's associated again with the Father, right? So the place where our Father lives is in the sky, which is a paternal place also, right? Que estás en los cielos. And it says, santificado sea tu nombre, which is holy be thy name, right? And santificado, I think that reminds me of like when they said lately that they would like sanctify a lot of like people from the church, like popes and things like that, like I think they sanctified uh John Paul II or something like that. So santificado sea tu nombre, which is, holy be thy name, and your name is what needs to be sanctified, right? It's God. It's so what does it mean to be sanctified? To be sanctified means to be, I guess, beyond human, right? Which is supposed to be like holy, like, holy. That's why it's holy be thy name. Santificado sea tu nombre. Venga a nosotros tu reino. So then your kingdom, have it come to us, which is like your peace, your clarity, obviously your order, your meaning, because we're talking about a masculine figure again, right? So, santificado sea tu nombre, venga tu reino, hágase tu voluntad en la tierra como en el cielo. So then it's like, and may your will, God's will is very important, right? Because they say you're either doing God's will or you're going against it, and that's not going to work out, right? So your will has to be done, may your will be done on earth, which is like now that, and I think that's the first time that, like the mother is mentioned, like the other side, right? So like the mother earth, your will may be done on earth as it is in heaven, like we already know that your will is done in heaven because you're there, but now have it be made also on earth, right? Sea tu voluntad en la tierra como en el cielo. Danos hoy nuestro pan de cada día, right? Give us today our daily bread. So make sure that we have what we need, right? Basic necessities for life. We're fed, we have food. In this case, I would even extend it further to just, clothes, somewhere to sleep, so something to drink, something to eat, rest, sleep. Like just make sure we have the basic necessities, I guess. The basic necessity of life is like food and what was the other thing? Food and sleep, right? Or food and yeah, something like that. So, santificado sea tu nombre, nosotros tu reino, hágase tu voluntad en la tierra como en el cielo, danos hoy nuestro pan de cada día. Perdona nuestras ofensas, como también nosotros perdonamos a los que nos ofenden, which is, forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And then that means that, you want God to forgive you so you could be reunited with him again when you die. And um and then it's kind of like you promise to do the same, you know with the people that trespass you, like with the people that offend you or wrong you, you're able to forgive them too, which is kind of like a trade-off, right? You're saying like, God, if you forgive me, I'll forgive people, or I forgive people and I want you to forgive me just like I forgive those who wrong me, right? No nos dejes caer en la tentación y líbranos del mal, amen, which is basically Don't let us fall into temptation, because we know that, evil is around the corner. We're always, it lives within us. Like doing bad things, like getting angry, all this type of thing. Like, don't let us fall into temptation. No dejes caer en la tentación, and deliver us from evil, right? Like make sure that evil is not with us. And then it says, Amen. I forgot what Amen meant, but I know it means something too. Um, but yeah, if I can look it up and maybe share with you for the next session, look it up. So there we go. We analyzed the Holy Father prayer. Um, so I'm gonna tell you, like I tell my students, I don't know if you guys have any questions, but if you don't, we finish, and I'll see you all next time, right? Um, so yeah, I hope any of this information helped you out. And yeah, I may be doing more of these, maybe not. Who knows? Who knows what the chaos level 2 system prediction might say? But yeah, if not, I'll see you all whenever I see you. Peace out.